Welcome to the Senior Techie Podcast. I want you to picture a scene that is probably incredibly familiar.
Oh, I bet I know exactly the one you're talking about.
Right. So you are sitting at a family gathering, maybe it's a Sunday dinner or a holiday. You look around the table and everyone is communicating, but, well, nobody is communicating in the same way.
Yeah, totally scattered.
Exactly. Across from you, your grandchild has their head angled down, furiously thumbing a text message under the table. Over on the couch, your adult child is rapidly firing off work emails. And you were just sitting there wondering, why on earth doesn't anyone just pick up the phone and say hello anymore?
It is a scene playing out in living rooms literally all over the world. And, it is incredibly easy to look at that table and feel a real sense of isolation.
Yeah, for sure.
You might even feel like they are deliberately ignoring the proper, respectful way to connect with the people sitting right in front of them.
Well, right off the bat, I want to reassure you, you are not behind. You are not outdated. We are exploring a fascinating text called Digital Dialects, and it makes one thing wonderfully clear.
It really does.
These differences at your dinner table, they aren't random, and they certainly aren't personal slights. They are just deeply ingrained generational habits.
Absolutely.
So our mission for this discussion is to decode these tech dialects. We want to help you stop taking those unanswered phone calls personally and instead, well, give you the exact tools you need to reach every member of your family where they are most comfortable.
Which is so empowering. But before we can look at what the kids and grandkids are doing, we really have to examine the psychology of why we all cling to our specific communication styles.
Right, the root cause.
Exactly. Psychologists point to this phenomenon called the formative years effect. There is this crucial window of human development, roughly, between the ages of 15 and 25. And whatever technology you use to navigate the world, to build relationships and establish your independence during that specific decade of your life, that becomes your permanent default setting.
So this goes beyond just, feeling nostalgic for the good old days. I mean, are we talking about actual neurological wiring happening during that decade?
We are, yeah. Think about the neuroplasticity of the brain during those late teenage and early adult years. The brain is actively pruning synapses. It's figuring out the most efficient ways to interact with society.
Wow.
It is absorbing the fundamental rules of how the world works. So if we apply this to you, the listener, we have to look at what was happening when you were 18.
Right, which for a lot of our listeners means you grew up with rotary phones. You grew up with network television where, a show came on at 8 o'clock on a Thursday, and if you missed it, well, you just missed it.
Exactly. The environment dictated the terms. You couldn't just pause a live broadcast or stream it on demand 5 minutes later.
Because the technology of your formative years required you to conform to its schedule, concepts like structure, waiting, and patience got permanently baked into your communication style.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you wanted to talk to a friend, you dialed a heavy rotary phone. If the line was busy, you didn't have call waiting or text messaging to just bypass the obstacle.
You just waited.
You waited. You didn't expect an instant magical connection. You expected a process.
Yeah.
The medium itself taught you that, well, valuable things take time.
I see this a lot like culinary tastes. Think about the comfort food you absolutely loved when you were 18. Maybe a hearty meatloaf or a specific family recipe your mother made.
Oh, definitely.
That food represents emotional safety. It is the food that still feels most natural and comforting to you when you are 80. Tech habits operate on the exact same psychological principle, really. The communication comfort food of your youth is what feels correct to you now.
So when you crave a deep, meaningful connection with your family, you naturally reach for that comfort food, the traditional phone call. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has structure. It commands undivided attention. You expect the person on the other end to be fully present, just as you are for them.
So the actionable advice here is simple, but incredibly powerful. The next time you find yourself getting frustrated with a family member's communication style, just pause.
Yeah, take a breath.
Ask yourself what technology they were using when they were 18. Let's actually move down the timeline to your adult children to see how tech adoption shifted their habits. We are talking about Generation X, often considered the bridge generation.
Gen X occupies a really unique position. They are the last generation to distinctly remember life, both before the internet and after it.
Right, they had a foot in both worlds.
Exactly. Their formative years straddled a massive technological revolution. So they grew up with landlines and early answering machines, but they adopted email when they entered the workplace.
Oh, okay.
And they got smartphones much later, as full-fledged adults navigating careers and mortgages.
So because it wasn't a childhood toy for them, it was a tool they had to learn for workplace efficiency. I mean, they didn't build their teenage identities around a smartphone.
That timeline is the key to their dialect,
Yeah.
absolutely. They view technology purely as a utility, not as an extension of their identity. Because of this, they really compartmentalize.
Makes sense.
For Gen X, email is the gold standard for anything official, important, or work-related. Texting is strictly for quick logistics. A text from a Gen X adult child is usually super utilitarian, like running 10 minutes late, or did you buy milk?
Right. They aren't writing novels via text.
No, and they aren't using it for deep emotional connection.
Yeah.
And they are just inherently skeptical of new tech. They will wait for solid proof that a new app is actually useful before they bother downloading it.
Well, if they view tech purely as a tool, they are incredibly practical about it. That means they will absolutely still pick up the phone and call you if something is genuinely urgent.
Yes, exactly.
This makes Gen X your absolute best ally. If you need a new gadget explained or your tablet is doing something weird, go to your Gen X children. Because they had to learn this technology as adults too, they usually explain it practically without the blistering speed or assumed knowledge of the younger kids.
Which is such a relief. But as we move slightly younger to the millennials, the dynamic really shifts. We're looking at a group whose 15 to 25 window was defined by the explosion of the iPhone and high-speed mobile internet.
A totally different landscape.
Completely. They didn't adopt the smartphone as established adults. The smartphone actively shaped their transition into adulthood. They're completely fluent in apps. But there's a fascinating psychological undercurrent driving their specific dialect that goes way beyond just knowing how to use a touchscreen.
Yeah, our sources note this generation grew up watching major institutions fail them. They entered the job market during massive recessions, they saw banks collapse, and they navigated soaring college debt. But I have to ask, how does a failing bank or a recession directly cause someone to text instead of call?
It's a great question.
What is the actual mechanism connecting economic pragmatism to ignoring a ringing phone?
It really comes down to risk aversion and the need for control. When you come of age in an environment where the rules seem to be constantly shifting and institutions are unreliable, you develop a deep need to document everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, millennials are highly pragmatic, and they use defensive communication. They default to messaging apps over phone calls because texting leaves a permanent written record. It allows them to control the pace of the conversation, draft their thoughts carefully, and just, have proof of what was said.
So they want a paper trail. A phone call relies on memory, but a text message is a receipt.
Exactly, a receipt. They will research absolutely everything online before buying a product or making a decision, reading dozens of reviews just to avoid making a mistake. They use technology to solve problems as fast and efficiently as humanly possible, minimizing risk, and then they move on.
I want to highlight something critical for our audience at the Senior Techie here. If a millennial grandchild or younger adult child recently helped you set up your new phone or fix your Wi-Fi, and their fingers were flying across the screen so fast it made your head spin,
Oh, yeah, happens all the time.
they were not showing off. I know it can feel dismissive, as if they are trying to make you feel slow, but that blistering speed is just their native fluency. Watching them navigate a smartphone is like watching someone who was born in Paris speak French.
That's a great way to put it.
You wouldn't think they were showing off by speaking French quickly, It's just their native tongue.
And because they value efficiency and control so highly, a text with a clear, direct question is always the best way to get a fast reply from them. They just want to solve the problem and check the box.
Right. So if millennials learned smartphones quickly as a defensive tool, what happens with the next group down, Generation Z? These are the teenagers and young adults in your family who literally never knew a world without a smartphone already in their hand.
This is where the generational fiction usually hits its absolute peak at the family dinner table. For Gen Z, the smartphone isn't a utility tool they adopted like Gen X, and it isn't just an efficiency and documentation device like millennials.
Oh.
It is their primary portal to their entire social existence.
Let's actually define some of the technical jargon you might hear them throw around before we analyze their processes. We need to know the vocabulary to understand the dialect. The first term is DMs.
DMs, yes.
You might hear a grandchild say, "I'll DM you," or "slide into my DMs." This stands for direct messages, usually on highly visual platforms like TikTok, Instagram, or Snapchat.
Right, and it functions very differently than an open social media post on something like Facebook where the whole family can see the comment.
Exactly. To understand the psychology of a DM, think back to being in a crowded, noisy high school cafeteria. You have a secret or a quick joke you want to tell your best friend sitting across from you.
You wouldn't stand up on your chair and shout it to the whole room.
Exactly. Instead, you would write it on a piece of paper, fold it up tightly into a tiny triangle, and slide it directly across the table into their hand. A DM is exactly that. It's a private, folded note, slipped directly to one person, keeping the conversation intimate and completely hidden from the rest of the crowded digital room.
That folded note analogy really captures their intense focus on privacy. Because Gen Z has grown up with their entire lives exposed to the internet, they are hyper-aware of privacy settings.
Very true.
They want to control exactly who is seeing their content at any given moment, and DMs offer that safe haven away from the public eye.
Now, the second term is memes, M-E-M-E-S. You'll hear them say, "She sent me a hilarious meme."
And this term is vital for understanding their preference for visual communication over text.
Right. Imagine you are reading the Sunday newspaper and you see a funny little comic strip in the funny pages. The drawing and the short caption perfectly capture an inside joke you have with your spouse, or it perfectly describes how tired you both feel on a Monday morning.
We've all done that.
You cut that comic strip out of the paper and hand it to them across the breakfast table. You don't need to say a single word. The picture does all the heavy lifting and perfectly captures the shared mood.
Yes.
That is a meme. It's a digital comic strip passed around to say, "This is exactly how I feel," without having to articulate the emotion from scratch.
When you put this all together, you have a generation that prefers highly visual, condensed communication. They trade photos, short videos, and memes instead of writing long, drawn-out text messages.
Mm.
And they are seamlessly multitasking, carrying on 6 different DM conversations across 3 different apps at the exact same time without losing their place.
I mean, I understand they like visual apps and passing folded digital notes, but I have to push back on the core issue that brings so many people to the senior techie. Why do they refuse to answer the ringing phone?
The classic question.
As a grandparent, you call them simply because you want to hear their voice. When it goes straight to voicemail and then they text you 30 seconds later asking what's up, well, it feels like active avoidance. It feels like a personal rejection.
It is completely valid to feel hurt by that. I mean, to you, a phone call is an offering of undivided attention. But we have to look at the psychological mechanism at play in their cultural lens. Gen Z has grown up almost exclusively with asynchronous communication.
Asynchronous.
Right. That means they can read a message, process it, and reply whenever it is emotionally or practically convenient for them. They are in total control of the pacing.
Whereas a phone call is synchronous, it requires both people to be present at the exact same millisecond.
Exactly. Forcing someone to drop everything and answer a ringing phone unannounced strips them of that control. To Gen Z, an unannounced phone call feels invasive. It is the digital equivalent of showing up at their front door, uninvited, walking into their living room, and demanding they stop whatever they are doing to entertain you immediately.
Wow. A phone call to us is a warm hug. To them, it's someone banging on the front door uninvited. That is a staggering difference in how the exact same action is perceived.
It really is.
They aren't ignoring you because they don't love you. They are avoiding the call because the medium itself causes them anxiety. It feels like a sudden demand on their time rather than an invitation to connect.
The actionable advice to bridge this gap is remarkably simple, and it respects both dialects. Text your grandchild first to ask if they have time to talk. Just a quick message saying, "I'd love to hear your voice later. Let me know when you're free for a quick call."
It is the digital equivalent of knocking on the door and asking if it's a good time to come in. Showing that tiny sign of respect for their communication norms, for their digital boundaries, almost always gets you a warmer response.
Yes.
They will likely call you back when they are actually in a headspace to give you their full, undivided attention.
But we can't stop at Gen Z, because the youngest generation is already changing the rules again. Let's look at Generation Alpha. These are the kids born from roughly 2013 onward.
The little ones running around the dinner table. If Gen Z is holding the smartphone, Gen Alpha is growing up in a totally different environment altogether. Let's define the jargon here. AI assistants and voice search.
Right.
You and I already know what these are. Many of us use Alexa or Siri every day in our kitchens to set a pasta timer or check the weather. We interact with a smart speaker. But the way Gen Alpha understands this technology requires a shift in perspective.
We have to stop looking at the speaker itself and look at the environment it creates.
Imagine having an invisible butler standing quietly in the corner of your living room. You don't have to look at the butler, you don't have to walk over to them, you don't even have to push a button. You just speak a question aloud into the empty air, and the invisible butler instantly reads you the exact answer in a calm voice.
It's incredible.
For us, we know we are commanding a specific machine sitting on the counter, but for Gen Alpha, they don't see the machine.
Right, because Gen Alpha is growing up in a house with that invisible butler always listening. And because they are handed interactive, algorithm-driven tablets long before they can even read text, their tech habit isn't a habit.
What do you mean?
Well, for Gen X, technology is a tool. For Gen Z, it's a social portal. For Gen Alpha, technology is just their ambient environment.
Oh, I see. They don't think about using technology any more than you think about using the plumbing when you turn on the kitchen sink.
Exactly. The early signs in our research show that Gen Alpha expects the environment itself to have a brain. They expect technology to actively anticipate their needs rather than waiting for them to type out commands on a keyboard. They assume the room knows what they want to watch, what they want to listen to, and what questions they're trying to answer.
As a playful warning to our listeners, do not be surprised if, at your next family dinner, you ask a question aloud to the table, and a smart speaker answers you before a human grandchild even has a chance to open their mouth.
It's definitely going to happen.
That ambient, always-on intelligence is the reality Gen Alpha is inheriting, and it will fundamentally change how they expect humans to respond to them as they grow up.
Which brings us right back to the bigger picture, back to your dinner table. How do we practically apply all this knowledge so everyone can actually communicate and enjoy each other's company?
We have to address the friction point. The friction happens because you are calling, your Gen X child is emailing, your millennial is texting for a record, your Gen Z grandchild is sending a meme, and the alpha kid is just talking to the ceiling.
Yeah, and the most important takeaway from our source material is this. Nobody at that table is wrong.
Exactly.
Everyone is simply using what feels most natural to the way their brain was wired during their formative years. The real skill of a modern grandparent or parent isn't forcing everyone to put down their phones and use your method, but it also isn't completely abandoning your own method to try and act like a teenager. The skill is becoming a multilingual family.
Becoming a multilingual family means you know enough of their language to get your point across, and they know enough of yours to respect your needs. Let's run through a quick cheat sheet to recap the actionable strategies here.
Let's do it.
First, for Gen X, your adult children in their 40s and 50s. If you have a detailed question or something official, send them an email. If you have a time-sensitive issue or an emergency, do not hesitate to call them. They view the phone as a practical tool, and they will pick up.
Next, for the millennials, those in their late 20s and 30s, send them a text message with a clear, direct question. Do not just leave a voicemail saying, "Call me back."
Oh, they hate that.
They do. They want to know the parameters of the problem before they engage. Say something like, "Can you text me the recipe for the potatoes?" That clear objective satisfies their need for efficiency and gets you the fastest reply.
And for Gen Z, your teenagers and young adult grandkids. Do not call them out of the blue unless someone is in the hospital. Text them first to ask if they are free to talk. Slip that digital folded note across the table. Once you ask permission and knock on their digital door, let them choose whether to call you back on the phone or maybe start a video chat.
Pick one person from each generation in your family this coming week. Just run the experiment. The next time you need to reach out to them, consciously match your message to their preferred method instead of your own default. Notice how much faster and usually how much warmer the response comes back.
It really takes the pressure off everyone.
It does. It removes that painful feeling of being ignored and replaces it with the realization that you simply needed to switch dialects.
As we wrap up this discussion, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. It's something you can explore on your own as you watch your family interact this week. We have spent this entire time talking about adapting to the younger generation's speed, right? We talked about their instant messaging, their quick text, their visual memes, and their ambient environments.
We did, yeah.
But I want you to think about the structure, the depth, and the patience that is deeply baked into your tech dialect. In a world of instant gratification, where apps disappear in 24 hours and messages are read in 2 seconds while multitasking well, perhaps your grandkids secretly need your slower, more intentional communication style.
That's a really beautiful point.
Maybe they need the patience of a traditional long-form phone call. They might actually crave the feeling of a conversation that has a clear beginning, middle, and end, where someone is offering them their complete, undivided attention without looking at three other screens.
Absolutely.
Just as much as you need to understand their fast-paced digital world to reach them, your analog dialect isn't just valid, it might be the grounding force your family desperately needs to stay truly connected.
Understanding how to weave all those dialects together is exactly what makes a family resilient.
This podcast was brought to you by The Senior Techie. It's available on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. If you'd like to receive their free newsletters, you can subscribe at subscribe.theseniortechie.com.